how did a lifetime in the martial arts shape a 20-plus year career in self-storage? And how did cleaning up his local tire store influence the start of his own entrepreneurial journey? This week on Stories Behind the Door podcast, the co-founder and CEO of StoragePilot AI, Kyle Lawrence. He rode the escalator to near the top of the largest REIT in self-storage before embarking on another decade journey, learning the ins and outs of privately held facilities. Today, he's taking that accumulated knowledge to help answer one of storage's biggest problems, which is lost revenue due to missed phone calls. All that, and he knows the difference between a teep and a triangle choke, which may explain why I'm smiling so much to have a talk today with my guest, Kyle Lawrence. Before I dive in with him, I want to give a shout out to my friends at Kiwi 2 Construction, Wayne Woolsey and his team, simply the best crews in steel, 30 plus years of building self-storage and small bay flex. Get them in on your project early. They will help you get out of the ground successfully. KiwiConstruction.com. As I said, he's Kyle Lawrence, StoragePilot AI. I got connected with him through our friend John Lindsay, another former guest of the podcast, and we connected earlier this year, Kyle. I've been really excited to have you on the podcast ever since. Really looking forward to where this interview might go. Always start with the same question, though. Storage, such a niche industry, such a special industry in my view. Talk to me about how Kyle Lawrence found himself working in self-storage.
First off, I just want to thank you, buddy, for what you're doing for the storage industry. I think it's really important. I think everybody in the storage industry really appreciates your voice and your platform. So,
appreciate you, man. Too kind.
So my background in storage, I've been in the industry for 22 years. Joined with a little company called Public Storage. I'm based out of Vancouver, Canada. So I was with them, and then I was a district manager, at exposure to multiple different provinces across the country, which I was very grateful for. And then went on to become vice president of operations of Canada. And after that, I left at an opportunity. I left on a great note, and still, as I say, I still have some orange in my veins, and very close with the team there. Went on my own, built some buildings, sold them. And learned a lot along the way, especially, working for a REIT, a big, seeing REIT level operations, and then going to an independent. You go from having all these properties to having like one or two properties. It's very different. So that's kind of been the trajectory for me, before landing into StoragePilot.
I want to talk about that because some of that journey is what created your decision to go into StoragePilot. And I'm going to get into StoragePilot deeply through the course of the half hour. I want to rewind a little bit, though, because you left Public Storage. As I said, you were near the top of the food chain. You're a vice president in charge of Canada for Public Storage. You're not very far away from the top of the company there. What gave you the wherewithal to step away from Public Storage and go build your own facilities?
It's a good question. I'd say it's opportunity. And actually met somebody. I always kind of wanted to do my own thing, and love this space. I got to say that and you hear it on your podcast. You had a guest on the other day. Everybody says it. Like it's tight knit. Everyone shares information. Like, that's what I like about it. And so I wanted to kind of, I had this knowledge and I wanted to kind of test myself, and I'd seen some opportunities. I met someone at a storage conference, and they were going to build a building, and we connected, and kind of went from there. And then it's always rolled into the next kind of opportunity. But it's scary going on your own, and trying things out and betting on yourself. And I always would go back. I continue to go back to people in the industry that I know that work at REITs and smaller operations and ask them questions, because I would say, hey guys, I'm coming in with blinders on. So, what are your thoughts, and how would you operate this, and how would you make decisions? So that's how I kind of got into the space.
I'm always fascinated by this question, and I still don't think I've gotten the perfect answer to it, but I always keep asking because I want to understand the courage that it takes to go be an entrepreneur, right? To step away from as much as any job can be steady. Certainly working for Public Storage is about as steady as it gets in the self-storage industry. What is it about Kyle Lawrence and your upbringing and how your mind works that allowed you to take that leap? And as you said, that always kind of wanted to go do your own thing.
I knew this question would come up once in my life, and today's the day. I think when I was a kid, I don't know, I think I was like 11 or something like that, or 10. And there was a tire company, a local tire company, a big one. They're big, they're well known in this area. And the front of their property didn't look very nice. They had overgrown weeds and grass and all this stuff. I literally went down there and I said, the front of your property doesn't look very good, and I'll clean it up, and I'll bring my lawnmower and weed whacker down there. And my dad would drive me down there, drop me off, and I would do that every weekend. And that was my first little, I think it was called No Limits was my company name. And I don't think I was incorporated, but I did that first. And so I've had some of these entrepreneurial experiences, and I've enjoyed them because I think I've got some creativity, and I don't want to put limits on that creativity. So that's one thing about in the storage space, you know, it's working for big corporate, and there's some limits on what you can and cannot do. And you go on your own, and it's like a tanker and a speedboat. So we can make decisions fast. And so haven't kind of looked back since, and it gets easier, right? Like, you're doing the same thing, right?
Trying to. I don't know if I know yet, but I'm working on it. I'm fascinated to talk about this. You talked about tanker and speedboat, and obviously Public Storage, huge announcement a couple last month, another huge announcement this week, which maybe blows my mind even more that they've now raised another $500 million to go do acquisitions. Talk to me a little bit about, you were working for the behemoth. You leave the behemoth and you're working on an individual properties at a time. Kind of what did you take with you from your time at Public as you were going into more, individual and private owner properties? And then maybe where was there a little bit of like, man, this is really nice to be able to do things differently?
Yeah. I'm so grateful for my time at Public Storage. I really am, because you learn, you, you do a lot. You're managing a lot of properties. I had, at one time I was managing properties in British Columbia and Quebec, and flying across the country and doing NOI statements
Short trip.
and getting ready for
For
NOI.
those, let me just tell you, for those Americans that have no idea of what geography in Canada looks like or what the different provinces are, British Columbia is on the Pacific Ocean. Quebec is about as far east as you can go. It's not quite at the Atlantic Ocean, but it's pretty close. It's actually like Toronto's right above Florida, so you're taking a trip across country for someone in the U.S. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to just give people some perspective on what that trip is like. It's not a short journey.
Yeah. 5.5 hour flight. And you're prepping for NOI calls, and NOI calls at Public Storage. You got to know your stuff, because you're going to get questioned on everything. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the auditing procedures and all the details there. I was grateful for all the support. And then you go on your own, and it's kind of like you don't have those tools. You don't have a marketing department and HR department and whatnot. So that's a tough thing to do. You realize that, like, okay, I'm like kind of alone, right? So I think taking that discipline approach to this business and then bringing it over. So I'd like to say, like, hey, we might be a small facility, but we think like REIT level operators, but we can also pivot quickly, like I said, like the speedboat, right?
Love that. It gets, and I'm going through it now, right? Like there's no back office to call to have you, when you're creating something from the ground up. It's funny. A name just popped across my table earlier today. I used to work with the lady, Stacy M, and shout out to Stacy. Incredible. I could always call her and be like, hey, Stacy, I need this. And it was instant, right? Now I don't have that luxury anymore. I want to talk a little bit about this transition now. As you spent 2017 till, you decided to start Storage Pilot. Tell me about the transition now of getting into technology and AI and how that sort of became something that you wanted to do.
Yeah, I every time I did, at Public Storage, the office, the corporate office was part of a property. So you could see operations every single day. And I think it's really important for operators, especially when you go on your own and you build a facility, like you better be really close to that. In the first building I did, we built the office right beside, built my space right beside the office. So I could hear all the conversations and see the conversations. The facility, my last facility that we did was a large facility that we sold to a REIT actually. We filled that building up in 11 months, and it was 73,000 net rentable, 100,000 square foot building. At one time, we did, I think it was 130 rentals in a month. So I'm watching my team, who are amazing. They're cranking out rentals, they're dealing with customers. And so I'm just watching this and I'm observing and I'm seeing all these repetitive tasks. I remember, way back when we'd write down a gate code on a card and physically give it to somebody and say, put it in your wallet and don't lose that. And then fast forward, we had a text message, and then we could put a little note in there too with the gate access hours. And it was right there on someone's phone. I thought, wow, this is a huge advancement. So on the technology side, I'd always looked at it and be like, okay, there's all these repetitive tasks that, I don't really need my staff doing. I don't need my staff having to pick up the phone to answer an existing customer's question about, what time do you close at, when there's a new customer, when there's a prospective customer in front. So I was like, how can we reduce these repetitive tasks? And I knew all the repetitive tasks, right? Being an operator, and I could see them. So, outbound delinquency calls. I've watched managers call, 40 clients in a day and their rent's overdue. And there's not too many managers putting their hand up to call delinquents, right? So now, like, we can do that. So it was the transition, understanding it, and the language was different for me. I'm lucky I got this partner that's way smarter than me. That's why I said you couldn't ask me any technical questions. But
Aren't we all?
it works really well because I know operations, and he's this data engineer, this whiz, and he's so smart and he thinks forward thinking. So it kind of worked. Like we kind of said that I'm front of house. It's like a restaurant. I know what the people want to eat, and he's the back, and he's the Michelin star chef putting it together. So
Talk to me, because you kind of alluded to what StoragePilot is, but we haven't really given people an opportunity to really know exactly what you're building. Talk to me about what you're building and what it's capable of doing.
yeah, it's
Without
evolved.
getting too technical, by the way.
No, don't worry about that. It's evolved so fast, just like the other AI companies out there too. And we saw each other in the conference last week. It was great to sit down with them and kind of share thoughts and what they're doing, what they're building. And it's great, right? We really came at it from an operator's point of view. So understanding what property managers do every single day, understanding what district managers and regional managers handle, and then the C-suite. So, for us, we kind of say that we're going to support from the desk to the boardroom. So we've got a virtual property manager that's voice and chat, handles existing and new client, communication and support, because it doesn't, AI is not doing everything right now, but it handles a lot of it, like the full rental process from lead to lease. We know that, especially talking with other REIT level operators, 60 to 70% of all inbound communication is coming from existing customers. So we don't need someone to pick up the phone and handle that. And so we're supporting the virtual property managers supports our current and existing customers. Then we've built a virtual district manager, which I haven't even told you about, that's exploded for us as well. So it's and I know what it's like to be a district manager. So we built the virtual district manager, which is like all of your SOPs, all of your policies and procedures are handled there. So a manager might have a question. They got to call you up and, hey, Kyle, I've got a tenant that came in. They're delinquent, but they're bankrupt. How do I handle this? How do I handle this? And we've got that 24 hours a day. We added to it, so it's also got a little bit of HR support. Hey, I'm working with this guy, Joe, and Joe keeps showing up late. Do you have any tips for me? I got a customer, complaining about a rent increase. Can you help me with this conversation? Then the other thing we did, which I really like, is we, whenever I had a facility, I've always made a list of all the things that can go wrong in the storage industry. The gate breaks down, the internet goes down, all these lists, toilets overflowed. So we've also built that in. So now a manager, if they got an overflowed toilet or a gate that's broke down or how to start up the internet, they don't have to call up Kyle. They call up the virtual district manager, which is 24 hours a day, and give them that support. And that has really exploded for us as well. And then the final piece of it is the C-suite. We are finalizing full AI revenue management, data backed revenue management.
So many questions I want to ask right now because it goes in a bunch of different directions. I'm going to start with this one, which is we're in an environment where expenses are getting challenged on multiple fronts, right? Taxes are going up ridiculously. And I don't know how it is in Canada, but I certainly do. I'm going to assume it's not a whole lot better north of the border than it is down
Oh yeah, we
here.
don't have tax up here.
No, none. Not known for that at all.
No.
Insurance costs going up. Of course, with the cost of living going up, what you have to pay a human being to work is going up. So all these costs that are challenging expenses in an environment where rates have been stagnant for going on 3 full years, and stagnant's probably a better term than the reality. They've actually been going the wrong direction. This is a long-winded way of saying is how vital is it right now that, especially to your point about smaller operators, that they be able to implement these type of technologies that are going to allow them to not have to have so much human staff doing some of that busy work that humans, quite frankly, don't want to do anyway. No one wants to mop up, mopping up the bathroom is probably a bad example because humans still have to do that. But nobody wants to make the delinquency calls, right? That's not something that humans are motivated to go do. A sales call, a little different. Like if I can be the guy that signs you up, that's exciting. How important is it that owners have these tools to be able to just simply control their net operating expenses?
Yeah. Uh, I think it's vital in order to be successful in this industry, especially with the amount of competition up there. When I get on calls with clients and, we're on client, I've mentioned this, we were talking before with clients all over the world. Yesterday was Europe. We've got our director of AI is in Asia right now. And it's the same everywhere. The environment's the same everywhere. We're fighting for customers. And I like to say, like, you better pick up the phone. You better not, you better not put someone to voicemail and expect you can get them the next day. They're going to move on. So you got to kind of be open 24 hours, not like doors open, but you better be able to pick up the phone. Somebody be able to pick up the phone. You get answers to the questions, and that's existing customers and new customers. There's so many tools now, and I find like the cost of those tools have come down now that you can be the small independent operator and have these tools and operate like a REIT. Some of the REITs aren't even using some of these tools, which is surprising. So there's so many. I wish I had some of these tools when I was a district manager, even when I had my own properties. I wish my staff did too. Yes, it's expense control, and yes, it's revenue growth, 100%. Another thing that we don't talk about enough is I think like just corporate culture and employee happiness. It has a significant impact. Um,
100%.
when you can support them and they're the front line team, they're your district managers and they want to enjoy their job too. And if you can take a little bit off them, I think like the whole company and the team like elevates.
All right. Next place I wanted to go with the previous answer that you gave was about revenue loss, right? And you talked about like you better answer the phone. What does it look like? And you're somebody that's operated at the highest level, obviously running Canada for public storage, but then your own facilities. How much money are people losing if they're missing a phone call?
I, it depends where you're at, but it's significant. Like I think a pet peeve of mine is when I call a business and they don't answer the phone. And a friend of mine who's actually he's current VP public storage, he always just say, "Oh, I guess they don't want my money," and I'm like, "Wow, like I want to do business with you, and I just can't even get through." So it's significant. Like we know that someone stores with you and whatever your average rate is, if it's a $200 unit, they're probably going to be there for about a year. Like, what is that? Like, that's significant on your NOI and your valuation. So even our it's that front load, but it's also like we're looking at revenue management now, knowing that we've got operators, they've got big portfolios, and they're not even pushing up their rates. Sometimes they're leaving a lot of money on the table. So I think it's significant. And I do go back to the staff. A lot of staff are bonused on rentals. It's like, I'd rather have a big net in the water than just one little fishing pole, right? So it's significant.
You talked about your friend who's the VP of public storage, and I guess my next question would be: most people that are going to watch this podcast have heard public storage announced. Of course, they're going to take over NSA. That's supposed to go through third quarter of this year. I mentioned they raised another 500 million. Extra Space got a $600 million JV venture they're going on. Cube's got 500 million they raised. Smart Stop's got another 350 million, 500 million in Canadian maple bonds. The moral of the story is there is a ton of money that's going to be deployed at the top, both in terms of what technology they're using, but also in acquisitions. How does a smaller operator stay alive?
I think they can do more than stay alive. I think they can thrive. I really believe they
What does that
can.
look like? I love that. What does it look like?
I've, one of the first clients that we brought on is like, they're two brothers, and they run a 2,200 unit facility. It's a behemoth. It's a big machine. And these guys jumped all over it. And now they're renting like 24 hours. They're providing gate codes to customers that are stuck in front of the gate at 6:30 in the morning because on a pre-lease somebody didn't put in their gate code. So they're thriving. The smaller guys have access to that. They can rent, like I said, 24 hours a day. They can bring down delinquency by automating calls. They can remove some of those like repetitive tasks every single day, and it just elevates them. And I think it's a reflection in Google reviews and customer happiness, because we are fighting for customers and we want our customers happy. So I think they can. And then they're more efficient when they start layering on competitive analysis and revenue management. They're competing. It starts to turn into a little bit of a well-oiled machine, which is nice to see, right?
It's fascinating you say that. I've been worried about this for the last year and a half, about the velocity of the consolidation of the industry. But your take is exactly the opposite. That it's actually going to be, with this monumental escalation in the speed of technology evolution, it's going to make it easier for somebody to compete with maybe and this from having been in public storage, and God bless them, great folks and great operators, but a little bit harder to turn the ship.
Yeah, can be a little slower, uh, um, but they're always thinking forward. They are,
Yeah.
and which is great. But the smaller independents, and we started off with a lot of independents, and one a good example is a big group. Actually, most of our business is actually in the States, but a big group in Toronto, and one of their facilities is 300,000 square feet. It's a monster, and uh, he didn't they didn't have a lot of AI support and whatnot, and they went through a trial period. We do a 1 month trial, and then over the weekend he didn't he froze it for a second. He was busy, and I sent him an email and said, "Here's what you missed out on. Here's the calls you missed out on. Here's the reservations you missed out on." Monday morning, he's like, "Okay, let's go." So it's like they have that now, and I think for small guy can't have a big call center. They can't be 24 hours a day. Some of them can't, and now you can't. You can get all those as customers, they want 24-hour, like 24/7. They do. Just like Amazon. I ordered something from Amazon. I was telling a friend of that the other day. Still blows me out of the water. 12:30 I order this car charger, shows up at 5. I'm like, that's incredible,
It's
right?
insane.
So when we
Yeah.
call a storage facility, we want someone to pick up the phone, because we need something, right? We need space, or we need boxes. And our AI, we took it so deep that you can call any, if you have a facility, if you have 100 facilities and you want to know where the bathroom is at your location in Florida, where the dollies are located in Toronto, and the price of a 5x5 in New York, it's got answers. And then it speaks every single language you need. We've got Spanish, we're working on Mandarin. And that to me is super exciting.
That's
So
phenomenal. I could keep talking to you about this for an hour because I geek out over this stuff. Even though I'm not, I'm like you. Don't get too technical, but just from the high level, where it's going and the speed it's going. I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have answering machines, right? If you called someone and they didn't pick up the phone, it just kept ringing forever. And then to go through that evolution of an answering machine, which is great. To your point, then it went to an answering service, like where you got choose one for choose two for, and that's annoying as hell. To come to this place now where you always have the ability to answer the phone, and I've heard your AI, and it sounds like a real person. Like there's no like, you don't feel like you're speaking to an AI agent. You feel like you're speaking to a human, which is unbelievable to hear. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up. I'm gonna do a hard right here, and we're gonna talk a little bit of MMA because this is near and dear to my heart. It was a lot of my adult life, and there aren't a whole lot of people in the self storage industry that I can geek out over martial arts about. Talk to me a little bit about how Kyle Lawrence got involved in mixed martial arts and what that journey's been like for you.
yeah, it's great to talk to you about this too. Actually, good old John Lindsay, some of these introductions, there's a handful of us, which was great. Um, yeah, I started off with, like you probably, I started off with the karate when I was a kid, then the taekwondo, went through there, did a little bit of boxing, and then, an elementary school friend of mine who I'm going to give a shout out, Lance Gibson Sr. He was in the UFC twice, well known in mixed martial arts, fought all over the world, fought Dan Severn, as you probably know. And there was like
Yeah,
I don't
the
know, it was like a
beast.
50-pound difference.
Yeah.
And the
Dan
guy is,
Severn is a very large man, and Lance Gibson
yeah,
is not. That's
yeah.
yeah.
And
And Dan
Lance,
Severn was incredibly. For
yeah,
those that don't know, Dan Severn won multiple early UFCs in the single digit when they were still in the single digits. I think they're on like 376 now. So many, many moons ago. Anyway, sorry to
so
interrupt.
anyways, he's a pillar in MMA and was in UFC. And his wife, Julia Budd, was a Bellator, longtime Bellator world champ, just like incredible. And Lance's son, Lance Gibson Jr., just signed, as you know, you and I talked about, sign with the UFC. And this guy he is a future champion. We all just went down to Seattle and watched him. Oh, there we go. Look at this.
Bro, this is one of the best knockouts I've ever seen. So, just to set some context here, this was like 3, 4 weeks ago. He's fighting Chase Hooper, very established and up and coming young fighter in the UFC, a decade younger. And Lance Gibson was in a clinch. I wasn't able to record the video. Paramount Plus's technology stopped me. I could only get a screenshot. But this elbow, man, it was no joke. You happen to be in the crowd, I think, right?
Yeah, we were all there, and it just, so much positive energy. He's just the family's just such a wonderful family, and he's such a great human. The guy is so well spoken, so kind hearted, so hardworking. You want someone like that, right? And he was actually born in Seattle, but you want someone like that representing in you. So, and he came out after, like, and there was probably 60 of us, and yeah, it was pretty cool to see. So, yeah.
This looks way more vicious than it really was. This is where you don't want to be. As someone who's been in the cage and been in the ring multiple times, definitely don't want the face kick. But really cool. And I'm going to talk about this. And one of the things that I love about martial arts, after this kick and Chase Hooper obviously knocked out, Lance Gibson Jr. wins. The crowd, because Chase Hooper also from Seattle, where the fight was held, the crowd's booing Lance Gibson.
Yeah.
Dude, in like 30 seconds, he turned the whole crowd around and had them all cheering for him. It was like tears in his eyes. It was
Yeah.
really cool and for those people who have never really been involved in martial arts, it's a personal test, right? Like you're in there fighting somebody else, but you're not really fighting somebody else. You're fighting yourself, right? And the demons and the questions. So love that you are involved in that. Talk to me a little bit about that. How that involvement, even from a young age, maybe has played itself out in the journey of Kyle Lawrence Entrepreneur?
Uh, I think I want to ask you questions. I think you know that journey too, but I know we're going to have the podcast will be about you next time. But uh, I got to say, and I say this to Lance Senior all the time, and I call him after a class and I'm like, man, like everything else is easier after, as you know, going through a grappling class or any of his classes, if we're doing Thai boxing or whatever, I'm like, everything else is easier. You don't think about anything else when you're doing it, and you're with your guys and girls and you're pushing every day. So I appreciate it. It's a calmness outside of the ring, right? As you know, right?
Listen, I can tell you this. I've been in storage now for 5 years, and people frequently are like, man, you've become so well known in the industry and you're doing big things. And, lucky enough to have two partners that I'm now, we're doing small bay flex, but building something massive, right? Like we're setting out to build a multi-billion-dollar company. We're not setting out to build $1 million company. And it's mind blowing to think of, but I can say that less martial arts in my life, I never would have had the courage to even dream that big and have the belief that, as someone who's been kicked in the head in the ring and been curled up in the fetal position, when you get through that, everything else, to your point, it's not it doesn't scare you, right? Having conversations about money and dreaming, what's the worst thing that can go wrong there? Well, at least you're not getting kicked in the liver and curled up in the fetal position on the
Because
ground.
you've been
So
doing it your entire life as well, right?
I didn't start martial arts till 28 years old, interestingly enough. So I was a late bloomer, and by 34, I was fighting professionally. We mentioned off camera, I was lucky enough to fight the day I got knocked out. Chuck Norris was sitting in the front row. I fought in his league, the World Combat League. Rest in peace, a great man. Or I told you, my little brother, I was Down syndrome, was at the fight, and Chuck Norris took time to spend some time with him, took a bunch of pictures. So we could go on and on forever. I try and honor your time. I've already gone well over my 30-minute like hard stop that I have on this podcast. I want you to give people a chance. If somebody wants to learn more about StoragePilot, they want to get a demo of the technology that you guys have developed, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, just go to our website, storagepilot.ai. You can look at that. It popped up.
That's Eric, man. You met Eric before.
Eric's
Eric is the
amazing. Yeah, you got
man.
to give some shout out to Eric there. But
Yep.
yeah, you can go to our website. You can contact us on LinkedIn, and we love to connect with people. Right? Just show you what we're doing. There's lots of products out there, and we'll show you what we're doing and our approach to things. And it's been wild. It has taken off on us, and it's fun. So again, to meet someone like you. So super grateful again for you.
Humbled, man, and it's crazy for me to think that people actually care about my podcast and want to listen, but really blessed to be at this place that I get to talk to people with amazing stories like yours. We're going to have more conversations in different arenas, and very much looking forward to watching the journey, not just of the whole AI and what the crazy speed of innovation that's going on in our industry, but StoragePilot in particular. So Kyle Lawrence, cannot thank you enough for coming and spend some time with
Thanks,
me.
buddy. Thanks for the support. Thank you.
Before I sign off, I want to give one last shout out to my friends at Kiwi 2 Construction, 30 plus years of steel buildings and self-storage and small bay industrial flex. Reach out to them at kiwiconstruction.com. The earlier you involve them in the process, the easier it is for them to ensure you have a successful ground up development. Kiwi2construction.com. He's Kyle Lawrence, co-founder, CEO of StoragePilot AI. I'm Thaddeus Campbell. That is it for this week's episode of Stories Behind the Door podcast.